It's got a lot more general application, so we changed it from crisis intervention to humanistic intervention training, but the acronym was HIT. So we said that, and we just shortened it to humanistic intervention, just HI, you know. That worked better. We've been teaching it there ever since. But
you get high.
sure. I'm a psychologist. That's what I do in this world for the last 45 years. And you learn as a psychologist that insight, one of the social delusions is that insight governs behavior. So what I think is a good idea is what I'm going to do. But that turns out not to be true at all. And most of us interact impulsively or habitually or innately or whatever it is. Most of our behavior is not a direct product of insight, but the cortex likes to think it's in charge. But it's really not. So what makes behavior change, which is the business I'm in, is internalizing and integrating. And that's the work of it. Insight, if I gave Andy $1 million and said, be Dr. Phil today and be on TV and help people develop insight in 10 minutes, he could do it as good as Dr. Phil. It's not that hard. But to get someone to internalize something means to get them into their hard drive in their own words, so like they could explain it to someone else.
Well, so they actually live it in the moment.
Yeah, they get the habit of thinking that way.
Yeah.
And then integration is actually getting it into how you act with each other. And that takes practice, and it takes slowing down. It takes understanding the stuff, getting it into your own hard drive, and then it takes visualizing or imagining, past is memory, future is imagination. You know, Andy says this, I say this. The more I practice like that, the more it's going to get in. Right. I don't know what you said. I know what I heard, but more on that in a minute. So the work you have to do if you want this to help is internalizing and integrating. So talk it up with each other, get it into your head, make sure it's in your own words, not the way I would say it, but the way you would say it. Same idea. Role plays. If we were doing a half day or a full day workshop, we'd do role plays as part of the training. We won't have that much time today. But think of situations, interactional situations that are difficult or stressful, and then start plugging this stuff into that and reframe it. So, if he had said that and I had said this instead of that, it would have gone this way. And then you're working on integration. And then bringing it to practice means slowing down. So, why do we call it humanistic? What's humanistic psychology? What's that about?
When are you going to start rolling?
I already am.
Thank you. Should be rolling. What's humanistic mean? Why do we call it humanistic interactive training?
The instinctual human part, no?
Yeah, if you look at psychology, it started out psychoanalytic, Freud and all that crap. We have an upside down picture of him in my house because it was all warped out. And then in the 30s and 40s, it moved into the second school of psychology, which was behavioral. It's not about what's in your head, it's about how you act. And it was all about operant and classical conditioning, and all the child rearing stuff all comes from operant and classical conditioning, which is the two ways that people learn things. You can take 10,000 hours of learning theory in graduate school. I had to. But it really boils down, like a lot of things in psychology and sociology, to about a 1-minute lecture. And they could have cut it to that. The rest was people's dissertations on the same shit. So when you learn something, there's like two things that happen. You either learn by association. Every time you ring the bell, I give you a cookie. Pretty soon the bell makes you salivate. That's classical conditioning. So we learn. If I want to remember to ground myself every day, I'll talk about grounding in a minute. I'll take my car keys and I'll jingle the keys and I'll say keys, ground, keys, ground, keys, ground. So I can't get in there out of my truck without remembering to ground myself. That's classical.
I may take that one on.
Operant conditioning is rocks and M&Ms. So if I want Andy to stand up, every time he stands up, I toss him an M&M, and every time he doesn't stand up, I hit him with a rock. Pretty soon he's standing up all the time, right? And if I keep the rocks and M&Ms small, he thinks he wants to stand up. Because why would you stand up from one stupid M&M? But it doesn't take much. I've done a lot of work with addicts in my life, and understand if I do a line of meth, and for even 1 minute, I get a modicum of relief or feel good, no matter what the price is, my brain will start to chase that. That's the way dependency happens, and that's the way learning happens. So understanding that, that's how people learn stuff. Okay, when you interact, there are simultaneously issues of ground, process, and content. Content is what I'm talking to you about. So if I come to Alana and say, can you put X this into a podcast? I'm starting off with content, which is what a lot of people do. We get very content focused. I'm only here to get the podcast.
It's done or whatever.
But to have a happy life, and there's a philosophy called hedonism, which is all about doing what makes you happy. And actually, it works if you think of happy as happy for the rest of my life, not happy for the next 2 minutes. And then hedonism is a viable philosophy. If I want to have a happy life, it turns out that process and ground are usually more important than content.
What do you mean by ground?
So I'm getting there. So process, that's okay. So process is how we interact about the podcast. Are we being sarcastic? Are we yelling? Are we being nice to each other? Those are all process issues. Nothing to do with the podcast. So when they stop a meeting, even in government, even our government now, which and someone says point of order, what they mean literally is drop the content. There's something wrong with the process, and you're allowed to interrupt for that. You know, Georgia was supposed to speak before Kansas. Kansas went first. Fix that, and then we can get back to talking about the stuff. Same when you interact with anybody. If something's wrong with the process, if you feel like we're not hearing each other, we're not being nice to each other, we're not understanding, we're not grounded, then you want to try and stop the content. Like, whoa, pause for a second. And you have certain rights. They're listed in the handouts, I believe. One is the right to space. The right to space says you have the right to pause the process, to pause the conversation outside of the room being on fire. You get to say, hold on a second. And you and your obligation is to give other people space when they ask for it. Every right carries an obligation. And the other obligation is return and resolve. So using the pause button, which you guys can institute, if you say, hold on a second, or I got to go throw up, I'll be back in a minute. That way nobody follows you and you get to be alone. All right. You get that, but you have the obligation to return and resolve in a reasonable amount of time. So you can't use taking space as a way to avoid the conversation or not deal with it. But you're allowed to go to a neutral corner and not get hit, right? I'm just going to spit and use the towel. Don't hit me. I call time, right? And then you get to walk away, be alone, get grounded. Ground is just between you and you. It's how centered you are, how much your feet are on the ground, how much you're in the moment, how much. So each of you, as part of this, would want, if you don't already have it, some of you probably do, a ritual, a little way that if you're left alone for a minute, you can find ground. I got to get back to the moment, back to neutral, back to center, back to relaxed. And if you don't talk to me for a minute, okay, I can get there, all right? And it's one of your personal goals, if you can't already do it, is to be good at getting there in a short period of time. When you feel grounded and you clarify in your mind what just happened, what did I experience, what do I want to say, then you can come back and say, ready to interact. And when I have people come back and get ready to interact, the first thing they interact about by form is, are we both grounded? Mm-hmm. Do you need more time? Mm-hmm. Right. I'm good to go.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if there's a difference of opinion between the person saying, I feel grounded, and the person they're saying it to doesn't agree with it.
Right. So the guide that goes with that, that's a good question, is you don't need a reason, or you don't have to be right to call time. So you get more space to ground if you ask for it. It doesn't matter whether you actually are or aren't, or the other person is or isn't. If you say, need another minute, you say, okie doke. Unless there's a very important content reason not to wait the minute. Then you say, we better get back in 20 seconds. So you got to allow for that. But yeah, you have the right to space, which means you can pause for no reason. It's up to you. And anytime you pause. Now, some people are by their nature hares, and some are by their nature tortoises. It's just a personality thing. One's not better than the other. So some people are great at taking space, like the tortoise. They have a trouble coming back and reconnecting. They don't want to start again. Hares, not to want to give space. We can talk about this right now. They have no problem coming back, but they have a problem giving space. So you got to figure, who am I likely to be? I see a lot of couples where there's a tortoise and a hare in the couple. And, the tortoise pulls in when feels threatened. The hare starts banging on the shell, come out and talk to me. But if you ever owned a turtle, that's not going to work. Right? You say, sit back and wait. They'll come out on their own when they feel safe. Right?
Speaking of calling for a pause, I unfortunately double booked myself. So I need but I wanted to say that I'm going to look at the tape, and I really appreciate you doing this for us.
Sorry, you got to go.
Yeah.
You are?
David.
Dave.
I haven't met you yet. I'm Ilana.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Is this most of the crew?
No.
We're missing some pertinent other folks in life, and I think we're going to do a meeting later where the people that weren't here today can sit and watch the video together, and we can all kind of
Great.
interact over and learn
Great.
over it on the second session.
It's not like there's a fixed list of these are the people. It's
Right.
like people who are very, very involved, and then people who are pretty involved.
So anytime we interact, if I'm what's your first name? Rick. So I'm talking to Rick. There are simultaneously issues of ground processing content. And I got to train myself to track all three, not just one. So if I come up to Rick and I say, let's work on the podcast, and Rick goes, hi.
Yeah.
He's saying ground first. If we're both already grounded, it only takes a second. Right? How you doing today? Right? Okay, what about the podcast? So we're putting it in that order, and if our communication starts to get strained, or either of us experiences it that way, it's not about if it is or if it isn't, then you want to go, hold on. When I do this, I'm coming back to ground. One way I get there, and let me wax transpersonal for a second. I did it in the podcast, but flesh and bone, Alana, right? That's what we psychologists call her ego. It's who she's manifested as from birth to death. This character. The earth wants her to be Alana. That's the part she's playing. If you get down to the atoms and the molecules that she's made of, still ego, still Alana, still manifest. Manifest means when something moves from light, energy, to matter, right? Atoms and molecules are matter. Matter is her ego, right? Her brain, her mind, her body, all of that is Alana. But when you get down to the littlest pieces, she's really made of photons, little tiny bits of light. That's what atoms are made of.
No, sorry.
Go ahead.
They're made of neutrons, protons.
Sure, and electrons.
Yeah, no photons.
Right. But when it gets down to the recent
Quarks. No, there's no
quarks.
Photons, no photons that way. Sorry.
Would you accept that? Would you accept?
Ego talking?
Would you accept that light converts to matter?
I feel pretty grounded. I don't feel as grounded as I wish I was. Because if I had been as grounded as I wish I was, I wouldn't have interrupted us on a minor point like that.
We have a good role play here, Don.
Right. So what I would claim is that ultimately the universe is made of energy, light. And it converts to matter, and matter converts back to light, and that goes on forever. When they figured that out, and there's a book called Beyond the Quantum that describes this better than I could, Barry Talbot. He's excellent. It's physics for idiots like me, and so he writes it so you can understand it.
Who's the author?
Talbot, T-A-L, it seems Michael or Barry, one of those.
I think it's Michael.
It's Beyond the Quantum, right? Michael.
I think so.
So they started studying light, because that's what everything's made of. Me, you, the table, the door. And they went, what is light about? Well, what the science that governs, correct me if you wish, and what light is about is quantum physics. Quantum physics asks that question, what's the nature of light? Right. Doesn't play by the same rules, but we're all made of. So they discovered 3 things about light in Talbot's book that will matter in this training. One is, it's eternal. It moves around, but it doesn't die. Changes form, goes from here to there, but doesn't disappear. Our egos die and disappear, so to speak. Not the idea of Alana, but the physical Alana is temporary. But the light is eternal. The second thing they figured out, and this is the trippiest one for me, is that the light is aware. And they show you the math and go, you don't have to take it on faith. The light is watching us have this conversation. Being aware of it, learning from it. That was fascinating. So Alana is listening to me from 2 places. You know, her mind and body are paying attention. The light is paying attention. They're happening at the same time. All we need to function on the earth is the ego. That's the role we're playing. And a lot of people just hang out there.
Right.
But both are happening. And the third is that the little bits of light communicate with each other. And if you take 2 little photons or quanta, and they're part of, say, Alana's eye for a while, if you then part them and put them 10 galaxies apart, when you spin one, the other one instantly spins, like they're in touch forever. So all this stuff gets sort of communicated about, being aware of, being recorded forever. Actual physical stuff changes all the time.
But the
Small and temporary.
is permanent.
But the connection is permanent. The idea of you is permanent. But it's your ego that actually has free will. The light can only suggest. It has wisdom. It says, hey, what should I do here? The light says, probably this. But the ego doesn't have to listen. Getting our ego and our what I call our soul, which is that energy, in sync, is one way to look at a purpose for being. You know, why do I go through all these incarnations? So that my ego and soul act together. But that's all up to the ego. Without free will, creation has little value. So there has to be free will. So you got to get there on your own. The soul has plenty of patience. It'll wait, right? You want to take another 1,000 lifetimes? Up to you. Well, whatever. It's got time. Right. I saw this woman, Jean, who was teaching transpersonal psych at this workshop I went to down in L.A., and she was talking about the same stuff, what I call your Obi-Wan self. She would call the light that you are. She said, the universe exists within you, and you exist within the universe. It's an interactive thing. And the past, present, and future all happen at the same time. And the shape of the energy changes 10 to the minus 54th times a second as you experience it and interact with it. So we have a lot of potential influence if we get our shit together. So when I ground, I tend to go there because that part of me is not worried about nothing. It could be in the moment, go, oh, nice room. I remember when this was volcanoes and trees, you know, now it's a room. Like, hi, Rick. So the light sort of takes it 1 second at a time, or 1 millisecond. You know, the egos are living in, you know, the bills I got to pay next month and my kids and the house and whatever. So however you may do it, ground comes first. If you notice someone doesn't seem grounded to you, or you yourself don't feel grounded, you're going to want to stop the content in the process. Say, give me a moment. And then come back. And that's one piece of training you can do. Like I said, you might agree that's a good idea, but you won't do it unless you put it in your head a bunch of times, play with it in situations in your head. You know, it'll get easy and automatic. If I come up to someone at the fair to bust them for, selling an ounce of pot, and I come up and say, Andrew, and he goes, which has happened.
I'm sure.
We're not dealing with the pot anymore. We're dealing with, whoa, brother, I'm not a cop, calm down. You know, it's not going to be that bad. Help him get grounded. How do I de-escalate someone else? I want to be good at grounding myself. But I also want to be good at helping someone else get grounded, which is never a guarantee, but there are things you can do. Moods are contagious. Grounding is contagious. So one thing you can do is be grounded yourself and make the contact. You'll either get upset with them or they'll get more grounded with you, but you won't stay in different states very long if you're touching. So you'll get there, and if you can't get there, then you're back to taking space. When you feel calm, come and talk to me.
So if you say you're a witness to people who are really stuck in the right-wrong paradigm, you know, and they're both right.
They're what?
They're both right.
They're both right. Yeah, whose right fights are the most common fight there is?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, do you mean they both like really are right, or they both think they're right?
They both think they're right.
They
Yeah,
both think
yeah.
they're right.
That's why you put in quotes.
Right. And they're standing there, they're both standing their ground, they're not budging.
No.
And they're probably not grounded.
And it's not a service, so let's say like a group. So then what would be the best way to approach that situation?
You're not the one that's in that.
Wait, I'm not finished.
He's just setting the groundwork.
Right, I get
Right, thanks. What would be the best way to approach that situation so that, I guess, neutral ground could be...
A lot of what I'm going to do in the next 15, 20 minutes is going to be exactly about that.
For 2 hours.
So we'll get there. Bear with me, and if you still have questions at the time, we'll do it. Really, I wasn't putting you... It was a relevant question. That's what we're getting
No
at.
problem.
In fact, since you brought it up, there are 3 fights people have that are most of the fights people have in process. One is who's right fights. That's the most common one. You said this. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. This is what happened. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Here's the thing about that. We're sitting in this room together. We each make a map of this training. No 2 maps are the same. Because when I make a map, it's made half of sensation, more or less, light and sound bouncing off my eyes and ears, and half projection. My existing mood, values, feelings, history goes into what kind of map I make. So we end up with 9 different maps. Which one is the most accurate? Well, in terms of how it forms, that question doesn't even make sense.
See, just
Right.
to jump in for a second, our group stereotypically would spend the next hour or more deciding about the map,
Right.
rather than
Right.
using the map as a guide.
Making sure that his map gets respected in the interaction. That's called assertiveness. Making sure that Jana's map gets respected is called consideration. You always want to balance both of them. You want to be good at both, being assertive and being considerate.
Are you going to address when people are disguising assertiveness as passive aggression?
We can talk about passive aggression a little.
They're like trying to use these skills to derail conversations instead of actually letting things move forward.
Everybody has a sword. You get one at birth. That's your anger. Some of the swords are used passively, some are used actively, but they're both swords. Passive is a little more frustrating because it's harder to see the target. Right? They're sneakier. But what's the sword for? What is anger? And when I did a workshop for 50 licensed psychologists. I said, what is, on anger management? I said, what is anger? They went. After a while, somebody said, anger is an emotion. Yeah. Good. I said, okay, I'll accept that. What's an emotion? They go, I go, it's not a trick question. What do you guys do for a living? You know? They go, a feeling, which is what any group I work with will get to eventually. And I go, try this out. An emotion is a state of being. It's a way that you find yourself. You don't pick it. It happens in your mind and your body in reaction to whatever you're paying attention to. So whatever your experience is puts you in a state. The state gives you wisdom. It tells you something about your experience. And it gives you energy to interact with that experience. You can suppress that or you can express it. But that's what it's for in nature. And every one of those states gets a label, and that's an emotion word. Anger is one of those. So if my dog dies, I feel sad. What's the wisdom of sadness generally? What does that tell me?
You're alive?
Well, I know I'm alive. If I experience myself as alive, that's Descartes, right?
There's
What?
something you've lost that matters to you.
Yes. I care. I've lost something I care about. That's generally what sadness says. The energy is to grieve. You know, bury the dog, tell stories, cry, put pictures up, puppy shop, whatever I'm going to do to work through it. If I say, I don't care, it's fine, and I suppress that sadness, then it stays with me indefinitely, and it's part of what I'm holding, adds to my stress. I'm better off usually somehow expressing it and resolving it. Which is, if a bear comes through the door there, a brown bear, I get afraid. I didn't choose to get afraid. It just happened. Because I saw the bear. What does the fear tell me?
Flee.
The energy of fear is to flee. Get out the window before Alana. Right? I don't have to be faster than the bear, just faster than her. Right? Here, hold the scone, I gotta go. Right? Bears like scones. But the message of fear is warning, warning, danger, danger. Anxiety is the same except there's no bear. Mm-hmm. So I'm having this warning, warning, danger, danger sensation, but I don't see what it is. Anger, the message is protect. The energy is to attack. If I was making an Asian character for anger, I'd say it was attack by protection by attacking. So whenever, nothing I say can make Andy angry. But a lot of things that I say can make Andy vulnerable. Vulnerability fuels anger. So he might be hurt, he might feel disrespected, he might feel not listened to, he might feel embarrassed, he might feel threatened. Any of those are just examples of vulnerabilities, can cause him to drag. Yeah, so he's holding a sword all the time, right? So it's a habit you can get into when someone seems angry at all, and there's little anger, like irritated, there's pissed off, and then there's enraged. But the mechanism works the same. You want to get in the habit of not only protecting yourself from the sword, don't want to get stabbed, but also, what's the vulnerability right now? Because the trigger didn't cause him to get angry. The trigger, whatever his experience was, caused him to get vulnerable. His vulnerability triggered his anger. So if I can, and when we share anger, if I pull my sword out and go, Andy, that's going to draw all of his attention. He's going to have to do something to defend himself from the sword I have out. Right. But if I share vulnerability, it tends to cause nurturing. If he steps to my foot and I say, hey, fucker, he goes, but if I step out my foot and I go, ow, what's the matter? He says, I say, my foot hurts. He goes, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your foot. So the whole thing becomes a nurturing interaction instead of a fight. If I can get in the habit of recognizing or sharing the vulnerability, which doesn't make me weak. When I teach anger management, I say the operative question of anger management is, how am I going to defend myself, protect myself, without threatening or stabbing anybody? I can't keep the sword in the holster. If you were inventing a class in anger management, you'd come up with what I came up with, which is a model for impulse control, how to not pull the sword out. But that's not enough. I also have to then think, now what? That's where healthy assertion comes in. How do I negotiate? How do I set limits? What gives me power? The power Andy has with me really depends, even as an equal, no one's the boss, really depends on two things. One is his independence, and the other is his recognized, self-recognized value to me. I'm teaching the class. I don't want him to walk out. I want him here. I say, your name's not going to be Andy. It's going to be Idiot for this class. And he says, no. No, idiot's not going to work. Idiot's not going to work means I can leave. And you don't want me to. And if both of those things are true, I'm going to say, Andy, it is. Right. Only joking. But if I don't care, he should go now. Or if he can't go, then he loses that power. So I'm seeing this woman, she's being abused by this guy. Everyone's telling her not to put up with that shit, which I understand the feeling of. But I say to her, she was like 50. I say to her, if you left today, how would you support yourself? I have no idea. I haven't worked outside the home in 30 years. She has no power to put her foot down. So instead of working on not taking that shit, we were working on her material and emotional independence. When you get strong enough, you can put your foot down. But not if you can't walk away. And so, yeah, that's where that power comes from.
Have bread in the cupboard.
Huh?
In the meantime, have bread in the cupboard. Have a way to take care of yourself.
Yeah, there's other things you can do, and we talked about that. And if it gets bad enough, when do you call the law, restraining orders, all that kind of shit. But basically, she could stop him in a word. I'm talking to this woman. She's one more quick one of these, and she says to me, I took this assertiveness class at LCC, and I tell my husband these things assertively, but he's not listening, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I said, tell me assertively that I can't throw this magazine at you. There's a bunch of magazines on the table. She gets all good posture and grounded, and she goes, you can't throw magazines at me. So I threw the magazine at her. And hit her in the chest and fell in her lap, and she's just there looking at me. So I threw another one. Pretty soon there's a pile of magazines going up in her lap. We're both laughing. I said, it's not working. I said, I take all the magazines back. We talk about this. I said, I'm going to throw this magazine at you. Stop me. She said, as soon as that magazine hits me, I'm walking out of here and I'm not going to be your client anymore. I said, only joking. And I put the magazine down. That worked. Didn't have to raise a voice. Didn't have to get grounded. So power, that kind of power can replace anger. But again, it takes some training to learn how to hold the sword and clarify what's going on, what my vulnerability is, and what I'm going to do about it. Got to protect myself. You're always balancing assertion and consideration. So to get back to the other stuff for a second, ground, process, content. That makes sense? So really the point is that you're training yourself to track all three. It's not, and having a good life, a happy life, usually depends on the process and ground part being good, not so much on the content. Doesn't matter what happens to the podcast, if we treat each other in a loving and respectful way, and we're both grounded for the day, we're going to have a pretty good time. And we might laugh about how bad the podcast turned out. But to feel loved and to feel, you okay? And to feel connected, and to feel grounded, and to feel like you're caring about each other, that's, God, this country is so alienated. I was lucky enough to go to Morocco last year, and I was in Marrakesh. I mean, dirt poor. No one has any money. The clothes you're wearing right now would support one of them for 6 months. But not depressed, not unhappy. And what's going on there, brother? And nobody's sleeping on the sidewalk.
And no selfishness.
They shared their houses. They shared their food. They shared their medicine. It's natural and automatic that they'll do that. So connecting in a positive way has a lot more to do with having a happy life than having a $500,000 house and nobody else living in it. It's not the stuff, as our advertising would have you think, or the money. It's the community that really makes a lot of people happier. So you get a chance in this shared toy, the radio station that you're running together, to have a reason to interact a bunch, something to play with. But the value is more in the quality of the interaction. And if I can train myself to think that way, then when I come up to Alana, it's, hello, how you doing? And that doesn't take too much time. And we check in for a second and make sure everybody's feeling loved, and then we can talk about the podcast. And people will do better work and work harder if that's the mood they're in. We learned a long time ago in parenting that you can scare or judge or criticize your kid into behavior change, but it's not as effective as loving them and encouraging them. They do even better. So if you want your kid to act right, you're better off doing those things, figuring out how to be encouraging and how to not criticize and how to do operant conditioning, because that works much better than a hit in the head, which I meant. If my parents knew that, the whole thing would have come out different. So they were the lift your glasses, that's the only warning you're going to get kind of people. Coming out of World War II. Right? It was dangerous. But we don't have to do that anymore, although some people still do. But we don't have to. We know enough about how these interactional mechanics work that kids are not that hard most of the time. If you learn the principles, and that's what you do with them. They have choices. You can love them the whole time. You don't have to pull your sword out. You don't have to threaten them. And I've raised 8 kids, and I know, I never had to touch any of them in anger. But you do have to be a parent. You got to know how to set limits. You got to know how to negotiate. You got to know how to figure out what those choices are and how to give them. So 3 fights. One is who's right fights. We make a map all the maps are different. In fact, Andy has a set of maps in his head, all the maps he's ever made, lying in an unalphabetical pile in the bottom of his skull. He's going to organize it one of these days. Right? But that's his world. That's his reality. The Zach he has in there is his map of Zach. If you saw him later and didn't know me and said, what's Zach like? He can only read you the map. And the map is half sensation and half projection. So everybody's image of themselves and everybody else is different. It's amazing, given those differences, that we actually function together and compensate in a shared reality. And when you're a psychologist, you learn that craziness, when we put someone in a psych hospital, it's not because they see little green guys. It's because they decompensate. Can't play in the shared reality. Go on green, stop on red. If you can't manage that, then it's about compensation. So you can believe or think anything you want, as long as you're willing to be in the play and keep it all functioning, right? Generally, then you don't get locked up, right? So it's about compensation. That's how we measure insanity, someone's inability to compensate, to play together given our worlds are different. So, whose world's right, whose world is the most accurate, those questions don't really mean anything. If I say something to Andy, he doesn't know what I said. He knows what he heard, which is half projection. And once it's in his head as a map, he can't tell the difference between the sensations and the projections. It just seems like me to him. I don't know what I said either. I just know what I intended to say. And I'm the only one who would know that. And what I actually said, who the hell knows? Even if we watch the film later, people will map the film different. So it still doesn't get totally objective. It can't be. You learn in research, experimental bias is not, you can't eliminate it. No matter how you do it, you can reduce it, but you can't eliminate it.
We can only have our perceptions, right?
Because we only have our perceptions.
Right.
So, to not have who's right fights, you can train yourself to listen and speak only in the subjective tense. So if someone says, what did Alana tell you? You go, tell you what I heard. If you want to know what she meant to say, you got to ask her. Actually, I don't know what actually means. All I got is these maps, right? And that's all. What?
So you mean name the source when you say it? Well, what I heard is.
Yeah, this is what I heard Alana say.
This is what I read.
That doesn't mean she actually said it. I don't know. You'd have to ask her.
And if you don't know, like if you read it somewhere, you could say, well, I read.
Yeah.
I don't remember where. I don't remember.
No.
And you can still share it, but.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did she tell me? I don't know. But I can tell you what I heard or what I read. That's fair. And then if you want to know what she meant to say, ask her. And what she actually said, who knows? Right? We'll never know. Nobody knows.
And
Right?
that's fine too.
Because we each made a map of it, and that's all we have left. Right. So someone says, what happened this morning? I said, I tell you what I experienced this morning. Tell you what this map looks like. That won't have a who's right fight, because you're the only one that knows what your maps look like. And as long as you're not claiming objective reality to them, you can get along. And you can get respect for your maps without anybody having to agree. They don't have to agree.
So would another piece around languaging that, like if I'm not talking about what Lana said,
Yeah.
you said, how do we set up a connection from here to the transmitter?
Right.
I could start saying, well, you do this and then you this and this.
Yeah.
That's me talking as if what the map I have is
There's one
reality.
way to do it. Right.
Reality,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So the way to say that, or a way to say that, that wouldn't be that, would be, well, I think it would work if, or
Yes.
one way I've heard is,
Exactly. Or here's how it looks to me.
yeah, and
Yeah.
something that includes the me. I think what I
That's
I-
subjective.
But okay.
And the information is just as good. When you say it that way, it doesn't trigger a who's right fight, but I still know how to connect the wires.
I'm just
Right.
acknowledging
And that
that this is
feeling
my
that everybody
Sorry.
feels.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that presenting it in that way stops the person you're talking to from feeling bossed around or bullied or told
Right.
something, because we all get defensive in that place when someone's coming at us with this fact this is the fact.
Right.
So what's your first name?
I'm Chico.
Chico. So he's saying, here's how you make that hookup. Chico comes in and goes, no, you're not. And you say, Chico has another way to look at this. Would you like to have some input? Right? And I don't know, sometimes in my experience, that wasn't bad. Hey, we could actually do it that way too. So we're not out to have a fight about how you're supposed to do it.
Well, once we get the spirit of it, it doesn't matter what words we use so much. But if we're trying to get to that spirit, I think these kind of words.
If Andy says to you, here's how you do X, what you hear, that's why I say don't only speak that way, but listen that way. You hear subjective. Oh, here's how you're seeing it. They'll usually accept that. Yeah, that's how I'm seeing it. That's why I said it.
Sometimes though, if I may, that kind of communication can lead a person to feeling that they're in this pretentious kind of atmosphere.
So to get this smooth
then
and
when
friendly,
when they feel that, then the fight fire starts to get a little bit warmer.
if you think,
Who do they think?
if you
Who do they
think,
think they are?
if you think you have an objective way to do something, and you present it in subjective terms, but what you really, that problem can come up a lot. Because no matter how you said it, I still hear you as making a reality claim. And I might start to object to that. We're tricky with each other. But if you really accept the principle of this, then it's trophy. That it's just how I'm seeing it. And anybody can see it different, and that's okay. And when you understand that, usually it gets across pretty smoothly. Remember, ground comes first. So if whatever you say, if they start to escalate, you want to stop and, if you can, do a grounding thing. If you're grounded yourself and you make the contact, that'll help. If you listen to them, forget what I said. You go first. Tell me how you're seeing this. That often helps. When you give choices, because the vulnerability that causes anger the quickest is usually trapped. Trapped animals bite. If I put you in a corner, if they say there's only one thing you can do and you got to do it now, people tend to react to feeling cornered. Any animal does, actually. If I put a mouse in a corner and don't let it out, it's eventually going to bite me. My mother told me that. The mouse is going to bite you because you're not giving it any choice. Right? It's going to die in the corner. It has to fight. So the more sincerely I can do this, and nothing's perfect, the more likely I am to not have that argument. There are other things that go with this. We're going to talk about those too. The other two fights, by the way, there's three common. One is who's right. Don't have to have that fight if you switch to the subjective, listening and speaking. The second is you're not listening to me fights. You don't understand. And whenever someone says you're not listening to me, what I'd like you to do is reflect. Here's the map I just made of what you shared. Tell me if this is right or wrong. If it's right, you know I'm listening. Doesn't mean I see it the same way. But I hear you and I understand. If it's wrong, you get to go again. And one of the working assumptions is you know you better than I do. So if you say that's not what you said, we're going to go with that. I'm not going to say that is too what you said. That's not good. You know? I'd rather say, sorry, erase and re-record. Try it again. What were you trying to say? And I'll reflect that and see if I get it right. Yeah. So who's right? It's just subjectivity. You're not listening to me? Reflect. I don't want Emmer, if Chico and Lana are doing something together at the station, I want them to love each other, to respect each other, to care about each other. I want that woven into everything they do. They don't have to, love each other's personality more than another. We have different feelings about people, but you as a team can say, when we're here, you're going to get that from me. And try and give and take that as you go along in the process. It's hard without slowing down. It's very hard without grounding first. So you're always doing that. You take the door downstairs, you say, don't pass through that door without grounding. So you come through the door, wait. My cul-de-sac's a circle. So when I go down to get the paper in the morning, I do that every day. And I go down to the cul-de-sac, we're kind of 70 feet off it. So it's a little walk. I take the dogs. They do this with me, by the way. The dogs have learned. And I get the circle reminds me to not just pick the paper up. Go to the middle of the circle, face the 4 directions, remember you made a light, all of that. And the dogs face east with me, and then they go, what are we doing?
That's amazing.
We do this every morning, and there's never anything there.
Yeah. What are we looking at?
That's amazing. I'm so happy about that.
Yeah, I know. They do it with me. The third argument, and this covers 90%. Who's right? You're not listening. You're not the boss of me arguments. That's trickier.
That's the third one, is you're not the boss of me.
You're not the boss of me. Don't tell me what to do. Right. Now, depending on the structure of the station, if it's somewhat vertical, then some people have some position given power.
Right.
And it's their call.
Right.
And that's not an interaction of exactly equals.
Right.
So you can say, permission to speak, you're the manager, it's on your head. And if Chico says, don't want to talk about this, do it this way. Jacob. Chico.
Oh, Chico. I thought I heard Jacob. Real
There
fast.
you go.
My
So,
bad.
see, she already had a map of Jacob in her
I
head.
did.
Right.
I'm like, who the hell is Jacob? Because I.
You're going to start getting birthday cards and say, hi, Jacob. Right.
There we go. Chico. I'm trying to learn names.
Chico's Mark's brother.
The
There
thing
we
is,
go.
when the person who might have more authority says, I don't want to talk about that, what you can then say is, when's a good time?
If they want to give it. If it's their power by position, I don't have the power. If they say, we're doing it this way and we're doing it now, I don't want to talk about it anymore. But the best boss I ever had at the university, a long time ago, a woman named Judy Coffey, who became Judy Saunders, blah, blah, blah. You know the escape program at the university? Kids go out and get training. I was a GTF there. She was the director of it. It was her dissertation back in the early 70s. What she did, and this is useful in a structured business, is when I went to work for her, she said the following items are not negotiable. My neck, not yours. It had to do with, budget allocations, a couple of things. She said, outside of that, we're equals and do the whole thing by consensus. Your reality counts as much as mine. Except with these 3 things. Then I'm going to tell you and you're going to do it, and that's that. And because she made that clear, it was much easier to work around
That's
her.
what I was going to say. The clear communication, I think, is
Of saying, here's the limits.
for groups. Yeah.
And all these things were equals. The curriculum, the treatment of the kids, you're my teammate. But not with these things. The money's mine, right?
In our group, we're trying, and sometimes doing successfully, sometimes not, moving in a more egalitarian, consensus-oriented way.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
But then that leads to a place, well, sometimes it's time for a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then who makes a decision? And
So-
after they make
Some
the
kind of process
decision,
needs to be put in place.
So
after they make the decision, is there a problem that stems from that?
So you can do this quick or slow. This can happen quick and it can be efficient. But if you say, in the following items we're equals, we're doing this by consensus, One, this isn't in there, so if you want to make a note or send me on the film. One is, what's the question on the floor? If we clarify that, because sometimes we're talking about, because of the maps, two different things. Maybe we have 2 or 3 items here. What's the item we're doing right now? Is always a fair question to ask. Then, what do the worlds look like that are involved in this consensus? What's Andy's feelings and perceptions about this? What's Alana? What are mine? So again, asserting is making sure yours gets understood and validated. Considerate is, I want to make sure I understand everybody else's. The working question of consensus is, what's a solution to the question on the floor that incorporates respect for all of the reality shared? And it's not that hard a lot of times to find it.
And whether it's agreed to or not, there's respect.
Well, here's what you're getting because of your perception of the situation. Here's what Chico's getting because of his perception of the situation. They're different, but you can be on the same team looking for a solution that respects both. See, if one of you, passive aggression, says, just do it your way. No. That's not really a consensus decision.
Don't pay for that one.
Yeah, you'll pay later, right? If you want people to be involved or motivated to cooperate with integrating that solution, it's better if their reality also counts in how the solution is formed. So I can go back to my people and say, here's what we got because of our reality. Here's what we gave because of their reality. Here's what we're going to do. It's not what I would do by myself. That's not what consensus is for. Consensus is for our belief that the group wisdom and respecting all the realities is often going to produce a more quality and comprehensive solution than what one person does by themselves, because they're only seeing it one way. But if we chip in and form that integrated solution, usually that's stronger. Considers more variables, considers more points of view. And that's what we end up doing. What they end up not doing in Congress every day. But I think they should, but they don't. Right, work by consensus. And Mitch McConnell gets up and says, we worked very hard on this consensus. I say, I don't think he knows what that means. Right?
I was just wondering, after you have taken everybody's input and you stalemated yourself with the process of consensus, in other words, we can't come to that thing that everybody feels like they are getting their needs met in the decision, where do you go from there?
We come up with a proposal. Everybody says, okay, what's your first name?
Matt.
Matt?
Yeah.
Matt, M-A-T-T?
Yeah.
Everybody agrees but Matt. Now, Matt could block the consensus. We don't have a consensus without Matt. But blocking is a problem in consensus. It's not a standard part of the process. Instead of blocking, if Matt can say, wait, stop, I'm not feeling respected enough in this. But then our job is to go, share your reality again. What do you need? Let's try and weave that in for you. His responsibility in using that no is to say, let me explain what I'm missing and see what we can do to weave it in. He could just say, no, you don't have a consensus without me. That stalemates the system. But that is a misuse of consensus. It's a problem. It's not part of the standard process. If he says, no, and I'm not moving, and Genesis, point of order, that's not consensus. You can pause us for more respect, but you got to say what you need. And we got to keep working on it to find something within the time block that we have.
What usually happens to us is we just get stalled out and we take the decision off the table and then we don't make one. which is where I'm at. Like, that's what I'm trying to
Did we have to?
That's the
Yeah.
answer I'm trying to figure out.
If
How
it-
do you get from everybody isn't on board to making a decision with everybody feeling respected and heard
Yeah.
included?
So everybody's not on board. We got to pay attention. If 8 of us want something and one person doesn't, the process can get slowed down or stopped. That person has to recognize that 8 people have this consensus they're already like. We want to weave in something of yours as well, But we have to recognize that your reality should also be included here. And we're working on it. You have to recognize that there's 8 realities that are already there and not just ignore that. So there's a dedication to sharing. There's a dedication for me, if I work at Wiper and we do things by consensus, and they do, that the place is not going to be a product of my mouth. And when anyone asks me later, I can say, here's what I got out of respect for me, but it's not what I would have done if I had the place to myself. But we do it together. And so here's how it came out. You know, is it doable? Does it answer the question? Did everybody get some respect? You know, and that's what we're shooting for. If something gets tabled and doesn't come back, one thing you're asking yourself is, why was this on the agenda? Is it an item we have to do? If it is an item we have to do, I got to come back with a time frame and say, I think we have to get back to this because we got to figure out the rent by Friday, right?
On that, I think it's a good point for you to talk.
So, and then also, sorry, if you, in your experience with Whitebird, there's an example of consensus. If you have reached a decision in which the majority, the will of the majority.
Well, I'm careful with that because majority I have a problem with. That's fascism by the majority. You vote.
The will of the majority with the consideration.
We've made alterations for, yeah, okay.
If that's gone forward, do you have procedures in place to revisit it if it's not working?
The agenda is open, so you say before we enact this, before the money's spent, say, then it's hard to go back. You can always put it on the next agenda.
Or if
you're allowed to reopen it.
If it is enacted and there are some problems or issues, then
sure, we can, to the degree that we can make adjustments. You know, the paint's already here; we can't return it, but we can still talk about whether to roll it or brush it. You know? Whatever parts you can still negotiate. Sorry.
So
Go, take turns.
How do you deal with it if there's been a huge breakdown within the group in the process of trying to reach that consensus? You know, like we can't make you know, we're having trouble making a decision. People feel differently. They're all giving their input. Some people get angry about the other person's ideas, and then
wait. Did you say
with their sword?
So did you say people get angry at other people's ideas?
Well, just the process of, you know, you have those situations that I'm right, you're right, I don't feel listened to, or all those things come into that process of trying to create that, right?
You hopefully have somebody, eventually, if everybody knows it well enough, everybody can mediate. But hopefully someone's got the process down enough to notice that kind of thing happening and then say, wait, time. Where did we leave the structure of this communication?
So maybe a moment for grounding when things start to
reground. Everybody's listening to everybody. Anybody got a problem with that? Everybody's validating. What if I'm going to validate something Matt said? What does that mean? How do you validate somebody?
Reassure
I think we should do that all the time. But what?
Reassure that you heard where they're coming
You
from.
can do that. You can do that with perception check, reflecting.
Okay.
But let me feedback if I can see if I heard you right. That's part of it. Yeah. But everything that Matt does or says or feels will always make sense in Mattland, which is his set of maps. Right? So when I let him know that I made that connection, oh, that's why you're firing the crossbow out the window, because you think there are Martians in Willamette Street. That's validation. I get it. He says, fire with me. You know, we can kill the Martians. I can't do that. Why not? I don't see any Martians out there. Well, they're really there. Well, I didn't say they were or they weren't. I just said I can't shoot them if I can't see them. You know, maybe I can go down and talk to them. I'm the guy in the vest. Don't shoot me. I'll wave back if negotiations are going well. So if I have some way through validation to get him to put the bow down, that's the safest. That's a better intervention than say there's nothing to shoot at, put the bow down. If he didn't have anything to shoot at, he wouldn't be firing. And I don't want him to keep firing if somebody get hurt. But how do I intervene in a way that effectively gets him to stop that? Matt, sorry.
So it seems like the way we do things is we set a time limit for the thing we want to talk about. So
who determines the time limit?
Already restricts us.
Who determines it?
Well, it's a few people determine that. So then, like,
A few?
the person who's
Some of
the,
these can.
the coordinator does that. So then it's like we talk about stuff, and then a lot of times the subject gets changed.
You know,
So that, but we don't take a vote. We don't poll each other to see where we are. Together.
I mean, I don't like voting, but some people work that way, and it's okay. The board of directors
like
in
the
the works that
subject
way.
gets changed.
Yeah.
We don't know where it's going.
So-
we don't know what the
so you-
decision was.
So if you say, do I have the right in a meeting like this to a point of order, to switch from content to process? If they say yeah, if they say no, you might want to say, whoa, we don't have a right to correct the process as we go. Values clarification wise, most people won't argue with that. They'll say, sure. If you say point of order, and they go, what? You go, it feels to me like we just changed the subject.
Without a
So maybe there's 2 items up here, not one. I don't know. We were talking about this, and now it sounds like you want to talk about this, and I didn't hear that one get done. I didn't hear it get done. Maybe it did, but I didn't hear it get. And now, so can we organize that so we're talking about one thing at a time? That seems like a fair request.
I feel like a lot of the
Well, I think the finality of it is getting to vote on it
Well,
or whatever. So,
I wouldn't want you to vote at all. I'd rather you work by consensus, which doesn't even have voting in it. It's not a majority rules kind of
consensus
thing.
Would be like when people finally, you take a vote and they all agree. If they don't
No,
agree,
they don't
then
have to agree.
it could go
They
wrong.
have to find a solution that everybody within their own reality can live with. They don't have to see it the same way. They don't have to agree. But they have to say, does this solution answer the question? And did everybody get heard and respected in the designing of the solution? And a lot of times 3 or 4 or 5 people already agree about how it should go, so they don't have to keep repeating themselves, each one having to say the same thing. So you're already most of the way there. We have to deal with the objections of Jenna and Alana, because they both needed something else out of this. So you're working your way toward a consensus. From there, someone makes a proposal and a plan. I think we have it. Here's the consensus. Can everybody understand it? Can everybody live with it? And you still get a chance at that point to object. To say, not on the things that are vertical. If I say, look, this station runs by, in charge of so-and-so, if I'm meeting with the general manager of the country fair, we do things by consensus a lot. But it's his neck, not mine. So he can say, conversation's over, do it this way. And that's what we're doing. Because he's the one fiduciarily responsible for the whole thing. And that's not, and we know that part's vertical. So understanding how the power works in the place. If we're all equals and we do things as a team and nobody's anybody's boss, that's great. I love that. I prefer that. But then we have to understand consensus and how to build it. And we can. But a person objecting, what they're objecting, if Andy objects to a consensus we're proposing, he's got the obligation to say, here's what I still need. And I recognize you're all ready to go forward with this. But I need a provision in there that shows some respect for where I don't see it the same way. And we look for that together. Well, how about this? If we do this, if we do this extra check or get this research before we spend this money, is that okay? Yeah, I could live with that. Mm-hmm. Him already recognizing that it's not, if I was doing it myself, I wouldn't even do this. But I'm not doing it myself. We're a team. And I want to respect that in how we talk to each other.
So structure during meeting times. Sorry, I didn't put my hand up. I'm just, because I'm not a part of these meetings and I haven't really been a part of any of that. I do a show, I come around, I say hi. I'm not really involved in any of these big decision-making moments. So I'm asking, like, I don't know anything because I don't know anything. But the meetings when you all sit down and start to interact, is there an organized situation that's set, or?
You mean like an agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have an agenda.
And can anybody put an item on the agenda who wants to?
Yeah, we have a
Yeah,
facilitator.
That's good.
Good.
Yeah, I tried to.
I just haven't been to one.
So even something that's already been decided, you can still reopen it if you want to. And someone will say, why are you reopening this? You say, well, because I'm not happy with this piece. I thought about it some more. I want to reprocess it a little bit. Okay. What's the harm in that?
Well, the harm might be we have 4 things on the agenda already, and all of them seem much higher, even after hearing your thing.
So how do we?
So we may end up having a bit of a conversation in the moment. It's like a new item, agreeing on what the. I mean, we
So on the
actually
agenda
do that.
somewhere.
We do agenda review
But-
every meeting anyway.
Right, and if you do that at the beginning,
Yeah, we do.
so to say which of these has to get done tonight, that kind of stuff, and we prioritize the agenda, that's more than fair to do.
That has helped a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got this thing and we got to get it done in a half an hour. Well, that gives us a frame to try and work the consensus in.
And then when we come to the end of that time,
And
I'm sorry, go.
yeah, I gotta miss something, but I get to see you.
Thank you for
Chico.
coming, Chico. Thank you.
That's
nice to meet you.
that's both walkout cards. Nobody else gets to leave.
Okay.
I'll email.
I have to make a call, but I don't want.
Andy, oh, now you're leaving.
No, I'll be right back. I promise.
I love you. I'm just kidding. So, Andy,
If you're willing, would you be willing to spend a minute or 2 or 4 on self-responsibility, like that I am not responsible for how you choose to feel and vice versa?
I can't.
If you still are believing in that paradigm.
feelings are natural and spontaneous. So none of them are wrong. They're just a function of a person's maps or experience. Where they are at a given moment produces their emotional state. That's nobody's responsibility, really. You're accountable for your behavior. We agree to that in the social structure. So if I throw a chair through the window, I'm paying for the window, or I'm going to jail for assault if somebody gets hurt. That's accountability. But it's not responsibility. If I had the ability to choose in that moment, I wouldn't have thrown the chair. Rarely, but sometimes, somebody throws the chair on purpose. I'm grounded, but I want to scare you. Those are less typical. More typically, people lose their temper, and then they get blamed for what they did. And it's not that they should get off the hook, because they have to be accountable, because that's the way our system works. But you can make someone accountable without blaming them or hating them. Really sorry you didn't control the chair, but it's going to be $500. We take care of credit.
Like, could I, is it possible for me to make you feel angry? Don't you choose that anger?
It's possible for you in a lot of ways to make me feel vulnerable.
Okay, but
You could do something that hurts me or threatens me.
right, but then I can make you feel vulnerable, but I can't make you feel angry?
My vulnerability makes me angry. It's my protection mechanism.
Okay.
So you scared me, so I pulled my sword out. And it was all sort of automatic. I didn't choose any of that. But that's what happened. Now, where my sword goes, I'm going to end up paying the price for it, because that's accountability.
So having accountability for our own communication styles is important too.
For sure.
Recognizing.
For sure.
Maybe make something possible.
But to act out of free will, to follow a principle like one of these, if you believe in it, because I'm choosing to, I think requires being grounded. The less grounded you are, the less free will you have. Grounded is center, grounded middle of the bicycle wheel. I can go down any spoke. If I'm in a spoke, I can only go in 2 places. Right? So I have choice when I'm feeling grounded. That's why I want to stop behaving when I'm not grounded and say, leave me alone for a second. So I can get back to it. I was in wait a second, Jen. I was in an Aikido class, and the guy would come at us to hit you in the head with a piece of. Anytime I went, do it again. It's really hard to train yourself to hold ground, especially when you're feeling threatened and make a choice. So it takes practice. Huh?
You said to hold ground. You much less step in.
Step in, but right, I want to step in, but what my cortex want is not what I'm going to do. Oh God, that was hysterical. We would laugh so hard. I knew 50 times how to do that. Like that didn't make me do it. Yeah, eventually, if I did it once, it was like, wow, that was right. You know? When we interact, 3 working assumptions. These don't have to be true, and you don't have to believe them, but you must proceed in the interaction as though they are true, or things will not go well. One is, if I'm talking to Matt is a hero in his own movie. That's the first working assumption. He's going to see himself as a good person trying to do good stuff. If I catch somebody sneaking into the fair without buying a ticket, they're not ripping us off. They're trying to come in and share in the love and party. They see themselves as a good person trying to do a good thing. So I don't have to be mad at them for that, right? But I must say, if I'm listening to you and I want to be accurate in my reflection, and accurate means you agree, the second working assumption is that you know you better than I do. So wherever I think you're coming from, if you say, you get to go again. Only you know where you're coming from. I got this map, projection and sensation. I don't know. It's just my picture of it. If you go, that was the wrong picture. I go, sorry, try it again. And it'll come out. And if I remember that you're a hero in your own movie, it's easy for me to find a reflection that'll work. Oh, you were trying to do this because of that. And you go, yeah. And you go, okay. I understand now. The third working assumption is that you're not bullshitting me on purpose. If I say you're lying, the conversation's over. Go for your gun.
Not now, but at some point, unless it's really short, I'd love to hear you talk about what you do when you discover that somebody has not been working in good faith.
Has not been what?
Is not in good faith. That they
yeah,
are,
if you think
are
someone
knowingly pulling one over or trying to manipulate or whatever.
So in the conversation, I'm going to argue that you can get where you need to go, but with assuming that they're not doing that.
I think that covers a whole bunch of more areas, but there are...
Because you could
still,
say, I could say,
yeah.
I'm confused. And Rick, and you say, what?
Right.
And I said, well...
It seems like
well,
as if you
well,
want to manipulate
you're
here.
sitting there eating this bowl of asparagus, and I thought this morning I heard you say that you hate asparagus and never eat them. I don't understand.
Right.
When you do that, they'll be happy to explain it to you. They'll say, oh, let me tell you why. And I didn't say I hated them. Oh, what were you saying then? It was just my map.
Or to cop to it. They might cop to it. That they...
If they say...
You're right.
If they say... Yeah, but those aren't hard. If someone says, I was screwing with you, that's actually a trust builder. Because they don't want to bullshit, and they'll admit that they were bullshitting, and it happens, and we're human. I say, oh, you were bullshitting me. And you say, yeah, I was fucking with you about this asparagus. Trying to do that, well, yeah, it confuses me, right?
And sometimes people bullshit to see if you're paying attention, it seems like, in certain situations.
Oh, they're testing you.
So, yeah, so you're like, hey, you're bullshitting me, and they're like, oh, so you did hear me say that earlier because I went a whole nother way, you know.
So that's kind of what I'm going at. Sometimes when somebody, really consciously or not, tries to bullshit us or pull over or manipulate or something, sometimes
What?
there is...
Donald Trump.
Sometimes there.
But he's only 11, and it's easy to see. Some people are more complex. Yeah.
Sometimes there is something behind it that's important that you want to find because it's this hidden thing.
So someone does something in bad faith,
Yeah.
and you want to correct that.
No, so I don't want that, right? That's why
Right.
I'm asking you. That's what most of the time when we think, oh, we found somebody really is in bad faith, the goal is to point out how bad they are and judge them and so on, but we're not playing that game, right?
No.
We're trying to play the other game.
Yeah.
So, but even when we're trying to play that game, we're playing with some people who are trying, and even those of us who are trying are still stuck in old patterns. So sometimes somebody is kind of
So what I find...
somehow not in good faith, and I'd love to hear you.
So what I find is that when I do values clarification with classes or groups, they're almost all the same. People that are pro-abortion, people that are anti-abortion, well, I don't know who's pro-abortion, but pro-choice, their values aren't that much different. They all like safety, they all like healthy homes, they all like happiness and prosperity, whatever. They don't have trouble agreeing about that. Where they disagree is interpretations of reality. So if I start off with the assumption that you're a good person trying to do something good, and we make mistakes, or sometimes I misunderstand, so I'm not calling you a liar, I'm just trying to clear up a misunderstanding.
Right.
Tell me what was happening with this again. A lot of times it comes out. They go, oh, well, that wasn't exactly true. It's really more like this. Okay, that's closer. We can make progress. you know.
That's
So
the thing. There's kind of layers.
Yeah, it is.
If what I want is to really connect with you as a human being, and you're bullshitting me, and sometimes I can make it work without uncovering the thing, and we go,
Sometimes.
it's okay. But sometimes it's really important to get to what was really going on for the sake
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
relationship.
So it's sort of important to this group, say, at least within the context of working at the station, that you to some degree trust each other.
We want to develop it.
Yeah, if we possibly can.
We have a certain amount, and we want to.
Right, so it helps. So if we all have that value, if Andy says, yeah, I want us to trust each other, his responsibility then is to be trustworthy. And when he feels mistrust, he has to go, can we slow down? And I want to hear this carefully. And then I'm going to assume, as I reflect what you're saying, sincerity and that you know you and that you're trying to do the right thing. And then, so even with my kids, when, they pull whatever teenagers pull, whatever we did when we were teenagers, it's all the same. Again, sharing my care and my confusion and my values gets me a lot further with them than calling them a liar, which just nuts them up, and then everybody's defending themselves.
Right, because then they feel respected and heard.
Yeah, and none of that means I have to believe your bullshit.
Right.
Right?
Not for a minute.
And if they say, so you know that I wasn't there?
Right.
No, I don't know that yet. Right? Yeah.
Just to be clear, nothing I said was intended to suggest I ever think it's a bad idea. I think it's always good to come in assuming good faith. I'm just also interested in what happens when you find out it isn't. But that's, the assume good faith, like that's the, it's kind of fake it till you make it. Like,
A little bit. A little bit.
If I show you that trust, and you realize, ooh, I was bullshitting, and like, ooh, yeah, you'll want to straighten.
That'll help.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you think someone is acting in bad faith in this group, that's a very heavy and serious thing.
Yeah.
And it may take its own meeting or its own item to say, I'm not feeling any trust from Matt. I think he's ripping us off or bullshitting us. That's a very difficult, but doable, but difficult interaction.
Again, needs to be approached because
Slowly and carefully.
putting things under the carpet like that and trying to ignore it.
Hopefully it doesn't happen. Hopefully no one's here to rip anybody off and everyone's trying to have a good radio
We
station.
have had to get rid of some people.
Sometimes somebody has to go. I can't make a consensus with you if we have no trust.
Yeah. Action needs to be taken when that.
And that happens. There's people who try and grab power or steal shit or, it's unpleasant.
Question about, I'm still stuck on once you have that breakdown moment, right? Once you have a situation where at least two people in a group have hurt each other's feelings, right? So they come back to the table, they're both triggered, and it makes that communication process that much harder. If you're either a part of it or if you're not a part of it, what is the appropriate way to try to find ground that makes people feel good again?
Well, again, ground is just you with yourself. So if I say, everybody take a moment, close your eyes, find your center, come from your Obi-Wan place, whatever. Have a way to do that. If we're going to process this, it's touchy. And the things you bring up, like you did something to hurt my feelings, are not as hard as I think you're ripping us off or trying to hurt the place. That kind of bad faith is even more serious to deal with. You did something yesterday to hurt my feelings. We can work through that.
We have some super passionate people in this group. Seriously passionate for their love and for making.
Don't you want them to be?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I think, part of it for us.
But if somebody says, because I'm passionate, I want this done my way,
Or communicate with me just this way.
then we got to get back to our mission, which is, no, we're a group running the place together. So if you had your own radio station by yourself, you can do it any way you want. But we're dedicated to sharing our realities and making one product out of the combination of those realities, and that's what this station is. If you can't, that's why when we hire somebody into a group like this, or somebody wants to join, however they may be, paid or not, they would have to, and it's helpful for the group, to write a mission statement that includes some of that.
I was just writing.
And if they can't, so you say the condition to work here is that you buy into the mission statement. So that gives us the ground later to say, we don't just do it your way. That's not, look at the mission statement, If you'd like to rewrite the mission statement, you can put it on the agenda, but it's been that way for the last year or two, whatever.
So if you have two humans communicating and they hit a wall, the best solution.
There's different kinds of walls.
Okay.
But if you think about the mission or your values, and you say, if the two of you are going to keep working here together, and you buy the mission, that was a condition on taking the job, then I'd like to slow this down. I'd like you both to ground. I'd like you to hear each other. You don't have to agree. You just got to find some resolution that you can both each live with and understand. And that way everybody walks away with enough that they can continue.
How do you deal with it if the people on one side or the other are like, this is too much drama for me, I'll just walk, but we don't want to lose people, so we're like...
No, but it's always their prerogative to leave.
Right, of course.
I'll believe that's up to them.
Help them, give them what they need so they don't feel like they have to leave.
Well, you can make your best attempt. There's no way to guarantee that. But you can reach out and say, hey, I'm willing to hear your reality, validate, negotiate with you within the bounds of the mission statement, and try and get something you can work with. If you say, there's nothing I can work with, I hate LU, well, then maybe we're done. Some people part ways. I mean...
Can that be partly addressed by having, again, the clear communication, where you have clearly defined procedures for dealing with if people are trying to make a decision?
So if this, having
a larger group, you might have committees.
Sometimes ad hoc. You say, this is a smaller group, want to work on this and come back with a suggestion. Yeah, that happens.
Like that. So in having something like that defined in which the group can help mediate.
Yeah. No matter what process you do, the best you can do will sometimes end in somebody leaving.
But some clearly communicated process.
But you're still coming back to, what's the question of this conflict? Say it's you and Andy. What's the question of the conflict? What is Andy's world about this conflict? You got yours? He says, yeah. I say, you got hers? He says, yeah. I say, you got yours? Yeah. You got his? Yeah. Okay, so what are we going to do about that respects both of those worlds? I don't want you to fight about which one's right or power trip it. I want you to figure out a solution that you can both understand and live with. You don't have to see it the same way.
Can I say something to that? And I think this is basically just reiterating what you've been saying, like, that, it can be helpful, I think it's very helpful to have the clarity of the structure or the procedures, but you've also been speaking a lot to, and I appreciate it, like the gut level, that we, like, to me, it's not just enough that we put it in the mission statement and put it there, because not everybody will have been at those meetings unless it's like making sure that the people who are most involved, whether or not they come to meetings, like, we've all had some conversations and talked with each other about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We actually kind of bullet point the most important things in the mission statement, and we talk about those things with each other enough that we can all kind of look each other in the eyes, or enough of us, and go, is this kind of the way we want to be? Yeah. And we've got that feeling. If we generally have a lot of us see that with each other, and we have a bunch of specific things in place about what to do in some of the situations. We can't cover it all on either of those, but if we kind of have enough going on both of those, it'll
resolve a lot of things. If Alana, within a second, Andy, if Alana, say, doesn't come to the meetings, administrative meetings, she is, in fact, and I think it's part of the mission, giving proxy to that administrative meeting. If she doesn't like something that you guys come up with, she can attend the next meeting.
But I've discovered that when she comes later and she's upset because the meeting got made, I've discovered that if I say, well, you could have come to the meeting, it doesn't help.
It depends on the subscript. What's the subscript of what you just said to her? The words were, well, you could have come to the meeting.
True, right, okay.
But the subscript was, fuck you, asshole.
Okay.
Right.
So the same thought process, if I was in the spirit in the right place, the same thought process would have led to me, oh, did you not know about the meetings? Oh, no, I didn't. Or
if that's sincere, or please come to the next one and be part of it.
Right.
Or you
we missed you, and hope to share information with you, and not have a patronizing moment.
Andy first, and then Matt.
I was just going to speak to Jana's point for a second. In that, if you have two people and they're very valuable to the group,
because of their specific skills.
Right. But they don't want to deal with each other, or they're finished dealing with each other.
Right.
Then I guess the group just has to say, thank you very much, have a nice day, and see you later.
What, mean they leave the station?
Yeah. Say that they've just grinded each other to a halt,
Yeah.
and they're not willing to put out any more energy.
Yeah. If you can see how they tied that knot, you may be able to help them untie it, given the principles we're working by.
If they allow you to do that.
If they allow you to do it. Ultimately, anybody can put up a wall and say, I'm done with you guys, in which case, maybe we can't work together.
I think what we need is just to get to a point that we can accept that situation. Like if there's two people and they're great for the station, they're very valuable,
They may not both be able to be here.
but they can't be here, okay, thank you. Maybe you might want to reconsider at a later point in time, to come back.
Because it's more important, from my point of view at least, it's more important that you run this kind of process with each other that produces that love and respect. The content skills, usually you can find another source. They're not the only person in the world that can do that. So if we have to get that done content-wise without you, then we'll figure something out.
I think there's also kind of a dynamic tension of like, I want us to keep trying to figure out how to work so that we can work with as wide an array of people as possible.
Absolutely.
And it just, so I think often there's no clear right answer, and then it's just like,
To an item?
if we keep this person in, we're going to be putting a lot of energy into making it work with them, and so we'll be living up to that value of working with more people, but it's going to make us less efficient.
Well, we're always weighing that out.
Or we could say, we're going to say a boundary and say, no, we don't work with this person, but we get to be more efficient. And it's like, there's
you're making those judgments all the time.
You make the judgment call, and
Matt.
So,
Damn
we've
it.
already
Oh.
gone an hour and a half. How long were we supposed to go?
We're done.
Oh, we were done a half hour ago. We're just enjoying. I will listen.
We're just kicking it
back
and
for
getting
days.
out of here, right?
so we failed in being clear.
Yeah, we
about
did not
and
communicate
the
that
closing.
properly.
Were you feeling
Great.
trapped? Were you feeling like you were staying longer than you could?
Well, also, it seems like the mission statement should be something done by the board.
Do you have a board?
The
Do we already have a
I
mission
don't
statement?
remember talking
Yes, we
about
did.
Okay.
So that speaks exactly to what I just said. If the board, by itself, draws up a mission statement now and says, this is the mission statement, and a bunch of us who are not on the board, weren't involved, it's like,
And then,
it'll grind.
and then
Like,
still,
yeah.
as operations, call this operations, if you will, not the board, but this, but operations. So the board sets a mission statement for the overall corporation, but it doesn't stop you guys from putting an operational mission statement
Yeah.
up there,
Right.
saying, as we work together, here's what we're shooting for.
We could add to it.
And you want it to
Absolutely.
harmonize with the board's mission statement, but
Yeah.
And as a board member,
are you?
yeah, I could say that, that's something I don't think that the board wants to do.
What?
To override.
A mission to override it.
No.
The board does not want to necessarily write a mission statement for KEPW. The board can have its own mission statement.
Yeah, what the board's going to do.
And KEPW has its own mission statement, and those,
Yes.
those are both written out.
But if somebody comes in to work here, I would like them to understand both.
Yeah.
Here's the board's mission, here's the operational mission.
yeah, yeah.
If you can live with that, you can join us.
And here's the dance we dance as a group, and here's the dance you can dance individually as you choose to be a part of this group or not. I stepped in and just started volunteering. I wanted to do a show, and I'm not real involved in much else. I've been helping with promote this fundraiser, and that's been amazing. But I'm not real involved in any of the structural stuff, and I'm okay with that. This is my dance that I've chosen to do at the station. I'm not trying to get more involved.
right, but then you proxy that out and you say, what you guys decide I'll live with. If I want
Right.
more say, I'll show
I
up.
have faith that y'all are going to do
Yeah.
this and do it with grace and as much swag as you can pull out, and it's not, whatever.
And
Whatever.
From there, then we should pick it.
And what I'm saying is that as the EPW board develops a mission statement, right, and I don't know if there is one. If there is, I haven't seen it. If the EPW board develops a mission statement,
Yeah.
I think it will go better if they get a lot of input and talk with a lot of people.
That'd be nice,
And
but
in the
that's
same
up to
way-
them.
I know. Yeah, legally it's up to them.
Yeah.
But I think, in terms of what we're talking about, that's all. That I think, and in
Yeah.
the same way when KPW if we review our mission statement and look at it, I think it behooves us to talk with people like you or producers. Who come in.
So you all have
Just
some.
a little bit,
I'll finish with this now because I know time is late, but we all have, I don't want to hold Matt up, but we all have some responsibility for keeping that humanistic or cooperative mood in the place. Right. So if I walk off so it's an art form, but if I see, Andy and Jenny in some heating argument, and remember, it just looks like a heating argument to me. They both might be happy with how it's going.
Right.
I don't know. But, can I check in for a second? Yeah. Are you guys okay? Can I get anybody a donut? Am I just seeing this wrong? Are you happy with this interaction?
Right.
If they both go, no, we're good. Don't bring the windows, have at it,
Right.
But if they say, oh, we're getting a little heated, good, let's get back to the principle, mellow it out, listen to each other. Grounding, and then you get back into listening and validating.
And grounding.
What's the question and what can you do?
Yeah. I feel like that, from what I've heard about life and the world and all the things that are going on, it feels to me like one of the main things that we all need to do as a part of this rhythm is to ground ourselves and to hear and to, step in without our egos and to, make sure, because a lot of times the miscommunication, we're on the same page. We're using different words and shoving our map in someone else's face and not looking at the other people's map. And if we can step back and go, wait a minute, what's your map look like on this street? Because mine goes this way. And which ways you're going on. So can we just make a cul-de-sac and just call it good?
And the light that Andy is already, I believe, knows how to do this.
Right.
It's only a matter of his ego agreeing to proceed in that way. Because the ego's going to do what it wants. Right? Free will.
There's also an element, I was hearing at least, of sometimes it is a matter of the content. So I think you're right to draw extra attention to the grounded process, because we're usually as if it's all content.
Well, content can get important too.
But sometimes it's just wait, did you say blah, blah, blah? Oh, no. Oh, okay. And
Good.
it's if instead of checking, you had gone off,
with
you could waste
bruise
15
on your
minutes
ego.
of mindset over something that was literally...
And so an agreement that couples that work with get into, but it works in business too, is to say, it's an active listening agreement to say you can always ask for reflection without penalty. Mm-hmm. So if I say to Andy, could you go do this? And he says, I'm on it. And I say, wait a minute. Could you feed that back to me? Yeah. Not because I didn't think you were listening, but because I'm not sure I said it clearly. Right. Yeah. And he goes, oh, you want me to do this, this, and this? I go, no, that part wasn't in it. Let's try again. Right. And that happens a lot. I mean, that's common.
So is it appropriate to have a safety word that you feel like things are beginning to become heated in the group, right? Somebody's getting upset and the way they're interacting doesn't seem like it's going a positive direction. Can it be an agreement with the group that everybody is somebody can say, oh, I'm feeling that.
Right.
Can we have that?
Right. Homegrown means everybody stop and ground for a second.
Can we have a grounding moment?
Well, it seems harmless to ask for that. But I don't want to say, Matt, you need to ground for a second.
No.
That's inflammatory. I'd rather say raspberries, which means everybody stop and breathe for a second. Just because I perceived it that way. Everybody else might say, nobody was excited. Just seemed that way to me. Okay. It never hurts to take a second and do that.
I think that's an important and really good tool that could be used in any group, conversations.
I think that having been facilitator at a couple of meetings, I think that anybody who's a facilitator, can kind of put that out to the group.
Sure.
Here's the vibe,
Mm-hmm.
If you're feeling that, something doesn't feel right,
we can always reset the vibe.
Asparagus.
Somebody says, reset the vibe, everybody goes.
Mm-hmm.
That has happened.
You can even ask if somebody wants to be the vibes watcher, that in particular, that everybody
You bet.
do,
That can be a job for a given meeting. Anybody want to be the vibe watcher, right?
And I'm super energy sensitive.
I did it last time. I don't want to do it this time.
I feel that energy. Excuse me, can we just...
Right. Last time I called on it.
In the conversation,
Right.
I'm going to be more productive in saying, "Can we all ground?"
Yeah.
If I'm not the one going.
But I was vibe master last week, and everybody threw something at me when I asked them to step back.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to turn
All right.
this camera on.
Yeah,
at
we're
this
going.
point.
I got to go.
I'm going to walk you.